So to the the matter in hand, I'm going to give a short talk, introductory talk on an aspect of practice. It's Henry's take on an old teaching, basically that there are four kinds of Zen student or four kinds of practice. This goes way back to at least the 600s in China, maybe way earlier. You can find this similar kind of categorizations way back in the early Buddhist sutras. But here's a little bit of a twist on them. This is how I'm going to present them. The first kind of practice is people, like probably just about all of us, who come to practice for everyday practical reasons. Things like calming an anxious heart, learning to love and be loved better in relationships, connecting, interacting more wisely, learning to concentrate more consistently, to focus better, perhaps hoping to sleep better, and so on. There are this kind of reason for practice is, I'm sure, what brings the great majority of us to practice. And we see the explosion of the mindfulness movement today in this kind of territory. How to become, there are these proven and now scientifically endorsed benefits that can come from simply being aware of the present moment for just little pieces of time through the day. It's enough, it's to start really sort of feeling better and functioning better and showing up for life better. So it's probably a timely thing that some of the old forms of therapy have been somewhat discredited there's a lot of great therapy, I'm not knocking it, but some of the older styles, meaning going back to Freud perhaps and so on, taking a very long time to get limited results, and so this kind of thing where actually we can tap back into ancient practices to get a little more agency in our own therapeutic endeavors. What a great thing. However, that's only one arena of practice. There's a second, which is probably not relevant for many of us, but certainly for some, which is, broadly speaking, coming from a religious framework, where practice may bring us closer to perceived entities, gods, deities, divinities, and so on. And this can also touch into what is known as transpersonal psychology, dream work, shamanism, animism, and so on. And there's, I think, no doubt that meditation practice can make us more open in this sort of area, if that's our inclination, and more able to receive love, support, and that kind of thing on that level, if we're so inclined. I personally feel that there's a general sense in which it's smart to recognize that we're responsible for very, very little, really, of the fact that we are here. We really, our bodies and our minds, our consciousness, our hearts are arising. Here they are. Did we make that happen? Well, I don't think so. That some maybe have belief systems where they would disagree, but on the whole, here we are, and this is already an expression of some other force, some other power creating us. I think of Dylan Thomas's famous line in a poem: "The force that through the green fuse drives the flower." Whatever that force is that makes the flower sort of appear out of the green stem, makes even the green stem appear. makes us appear, makes the trees appear, makes the earth appear. Somehow we owe everything to that. That's one way of maybe approaching this sort of second level of receptivity that practice may open up more. Third level, we could call this deconstructing the sensory system of the self. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but through practice, especially probably in Buddhist forms, we have sort of ways of teasing apart the strands that come together to constitute our sense of self. And as we recognize these separate strands, rather than having a sense of the whole self being one sort of lump, as we start to tease those things apart, like hearing and seeing and feeling and inner internal image, internal talk, emotion, sensation, once these things start to become able to tease them apart, the sense of self, we start getting little gaps in it. We start to see through it. And this can lead us to finding what in some traditions is known as the witness consciousness. It's a kind of a awareness that has always been here, has always been with us. We start to recognize, it's very nice actually to find this, that there's a broad awareness that has been with us throughout our life. It feels like a real homecoming to taste this. And, on a deeper level, that's who we are. Now, for some traditions, to find this would be known as awakening. And I think even in the Zen tradition, it's an aspect of awakening, to find this expanded sense of awareness that sort of is a context in which everything arises. Beautiful to find it. And by teasing apart our ordinary sense of self, we come closer to that. It's not quite the end of the road in Zen, but it might be, and it's enough if it is. So then there's a fourth level, which is a little bit, Zen would say, sort of deeper than that, which is an aspect, because that awareness that I was just talking about is, in the end, it feels like an all-enveloping oneness, that everything is there and joined and united in it. But from the Buddhist perspective, there may be something sort of within that, this would be the fourth level, which isn't even oneness. It's what Buddhism calls shunyata, or emptiness. No thing at all. And this is sometimes misunderstood as a sort of Buddhist void or something. It's not at all. It's actually everything. It's both empty and everything. And it's both empty and the source of everything. And so some people talk about it as finding the source, the real sort of basis, which is just boundless and empty. But everything comes pouring out of that. And everything is that. So it's wrong to think of it as empty, but it's not entirely wrong, so to speak. So now, okay, so those are four sort of areas. I'm sure this could be parsed out in other ways and has been. But the point is that all of them are profoundly helpful to us. And you don't have to choose one over the other as your target zone, so to speak. All of them are totally valid paths of practice in and of themselves. But to give you this kind of map lets you know that essentially these are sort of the major possibilities, generally speaking, to be found through meditation practice. And in this form of practice that we have at Mountain Cloud, they're all addressed to some extent, you know. What else can I tell you? Yes, it may sound a little dry, arid to schematize like this. So one last point is that on every single one of these areas, the sort of the markers of having some opening in that area always seems to be that we feel more love in our hearts. That whether it's on the first level of sort of coming to more clarity about our habit patterns that are not so wholesome, allowing them and letting them release in their own way happens through a loving acceptance of them, a loving awareness of them. And as they release, more love comes. On the second level, appreciating our being here, or whatever forces there are that make us be here. Gratitude, a loving gratitude, a sense of belovedness from them to be here. On the third level, you know, when we find this more pervasive awareness, it's a great sense of love, of being closer to all things. And finally, on this boundlessness of the last one, it's just unbelievable to discover that it seems as if the whole universe is made of a kind of infinite generosity. Okay, that's enough. I'll stop there, and thank you. Handing back to Sarah, and you know, I think any questions anybody may have, you know, for either Sarah or for me,